Well, there you are, boy. Platform 9, Platform 10. Your platform should be somewhere in the middle, but they don't seem to have built it yet, do they? He was quite right, of course. There is a big plastic number 9 over one platform, and a big plastic number 10 over the next one to it. And in the middle, nothing at all. Have a good term, said Uncle Vernon with an even nastier smile. He left without another word. Harry turned and saw the Dursleys drive away. All three of them were laughing. Harry's mouth went rather dry. What on earth was he going to do? He was starting to attract a lot of funny looks because of Hedwig. He'd have to ask someone. He stopped a passing guard, but didn't dare mention platform 9 3/4. The guard had never heard of Hogwarts, and when Harry couldn't even tell him what part of the country it was in, he started to get annoyed, as though Harry was being stupid on purpose. Getting desperate, Harry asked for the train that left at 11 o'clock, but the guard said there wasn't one. In the end, the guard strode away, which means walked. He walked away, muttering about time wasters. Harry was now trying hard not to panic. According to the large clock over the arrivals board, he had 10 minutes left to get on the train to Hogwarts, and he had no idea how to do it. He was stranded in the middle of a station with a trunk he could hardly lift, a pocket full of wizard money, and a large owl. Hagrid must have forgotten to tell him something you had to do, like tapping the third brick on the left to get into a Diagon Alley. He wondered if he should get out his wand and start tapping the ticket box between platforms 9 and 10. At that moment, a group of people passed just behind him, and he caught a few words of what they were saying. Packed with muggles, of course. Harry swung around. The speaker was a plump woman who was talking to 4 boys, all with flaming red hair. Each of them was pushing a trunk like Harry's in front of him, and they had an owl. Heart hammering, Harry pushed his trolley after them. They stopped, and so did he, just near enough to hear what they were saying. Now what's the platform number? Said the boy's mother. 9 3/4, piped a small girl, also red-headed, who was holding her hand. Mum, can't I go? You're not old enough, Ginny. Now be quiet. All right, Percy, you go first. What looked like the oldest boy marched towards platforms 9 and 10. Harry watched, careful not to blink in case he missed it. But just as the boy reached the divide between the two platforms, a large crowd of tourists came swarming in front of him, and by the time the last rucksack had cleared away, the boy had vanished. Fred, you next, the plump woman said. I'm not Fred, I'm George, said the boy. Honestly, woman, call yourself our mother. Can't you tell I'm George? Sorry, George, dear. Only joking, I am Fred, said the boy, and off he went. His twin called after him to hurry up, and he must have done, because a second later he had gone. But how had he done it? Now the third brother was walking briskly towards the ticket barrier. He was almost there, and then quite suddenly, he wasn't anymore. There was nothing else for it. Excuse me, Harry said to the plump woman. Hello, dear, she said. First time at Hogwarts? Ron's new, too. She pointed at the last and youngest of her sons. He was tall, thin, and gangling, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose. Gangling is when you are very long-limbed. So he's tall, but he's very thin, so his arms and his legs look like they're too long for his body. And so that's what gangling is. And usually at this age, when they're 11, 12, 13, and puberty starts to set in, so they're going through growth spurts, parts of their body aren't catching up. So children will oftentimes get a little bit chubbier, and then they grow up, and all that weight is used to make them grow, and he hasn't yet filled out again. Yes, said Harry. The thing is, I don't know how to get on the platform, she said kindly, and Harry nodded. Not to worry, she said. All you have to do is walk straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Don't stop, and don't be scared you'll crash into it. That's very important. Best do it at a bit of a run if you're nervous. Go on, go now before Ron. Okay, said Harry. He pushed his trolley round and stared at the barrier. It looked very solid. He started to walk towards it. People jostled him on their way to platforms 9 and 10. Jostled is kind of like pushed, so it's very crowded. Harry walked more quickly. He was going to smash right into that ticket box, and then he'd be in trouble. Leaning forward on his trolley, he broke into a heavy run. The barrier was coming nearer and nearer. He wouldn't be able to stop. The trolley was out of control. He was a foot away. He closed his eyes, ready for the crash. It didn't come. He kept on running. He opened his eyes. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people. Scarlet is a very true red. That kind of a adjective using scarlet is to emphasize that it's a high-end red. It's a very beautiful red. And so Harry has just run through this wall that looked like a wall. So imagine, a normal wall with bricks in it, and you run right towards it. Usually you would hit it and bounce backwards, but Harry has actually gone through the wall. A sign overhead said Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Harry looked behind him and saw a wrought iron archway where the ticket box had been, with the words Platform 9 3/4 on it. He had done it. Smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every color wound here and there between their legs. Owls hooted to each other in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriages were already packed with students, some hanging out of the window to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Carriages is another word for like a passenger train car. So there's the train engine, and then the cars that the students are all going to be in, and so those are called carriages or passenger cars. Harry pushed his trolley off down the platform in search of an empty seat. He passed a round-faced boy who was saying, "Gran, I've lost my toad again." "Oh, Neville," he heard the woman sigh. A boy with dreadlocks was surrounded by a small crowd. "Give us a look, Lee. Go on." The boy lifted the lid of a box in his arms, and the people around him shrieked and yelled as something inside poked out a long, hairy leg. Harry pressed on through the crowd until he found an empty compartment near the end of the train. So a train passenger car like this, the trains that most of us have probably been on just have the regular seats that may face each other, but this kind of a train, they have little compartments, so they're like little rooms that only have two benches in them facing each other, but they'd have a door, so they're a little bit more private. He put Hedwig inside first, and then started to shove and heave his trunk towards the train door. He tried to lift it up the steps, but could hardly raise one end, and twice he dropped it painfully on his foot. "Want a hand?" It was one of the red-haired twins he'd followed through the ticket box. "Yes, please," Harry panted. "Oi, Fred, come here and help." With the twins' help, Harry's trunk was at last tucked away in a corner of the compartment. "Thanks," said Harry, pushing his sweaty hair out of his eyes. "What's that?" said one of the twins suddenly, pointing at Harry's lightning scar. "Blimey," said the other twin. "Are you?" "He is," said the first twin. "Aren't you?" he added to Harry. "What?" said Harry. "Harry Potter," chorused the twins. "Oh, him," said Harry. "I mean, yes, I am." The two boys gawped at him, and Harry felt himself going red. Then, to his relief, a voice came floating in through the train's open door. "Fred? George, are you there?" "Coming, Mum." With a last look at Harry, the twins hopped off the train. Harry sat down next to the window where, half hidden, he could watch the red-haired family on the platform and hear what they were saying. Their mother had just taken out her handkerchief. "Ron, you've got something on your nose." The youngest boy tried to jerk out of the way, but she grabbed him and began rubbing the end of his nose. "Mum, get off!" He wriggled free. "Ah, has Uncle Ronnie got something on his nosy?" said one of the twins. "Shut up," said Ron. "Where's Percy?" said their mother. "He's coming now." The oldest boy came striding into sight. He'd already changed into his billowing black Hogwarts robes, and Harry noticed a shining badge, red and gold badge on his chest with the letter P on it. So this is where J.K. Rowling does really, really well in her writing. Look at the verbs she uses to describe what the characters are doing, and Percy's a really good example. When we first are introduced to him, a couple pages earlier, it says, "What looked like the oldest boy marched towards platforms 9 and 10. So think of military individuals, people in the armed forces, and how they march. Very proper, very straight as they walk. And then the second time he's walking, he's striding. So he has a certain air about him, an atmosphere that he likes to keep himself prim and proper and poised. And so we're going to see that in the next minute or the next couple lines that he thinks he's quite important. Can't stay long, mother, he said. I'm up front. The prefects have got 2 compartments to themselves. Oh, are you a prefect, Percy? Said one of the twins, with an air of great surprise. You should have said something. We had no idea. Hang on. I think I remember him saying something about it, said the other twin. Once. Or twice. A minute. All summer. Oh, shut up, said Percy the prefect. How come Percy gets new robes anyway? Said one of the twins. Because he's a prefect, said their mother fondly. All right, dear, we'll have a good term. Send me an owl when you get there. She kissed Percy on the cheek and he left. Then she turned to the twins. So prefect is a very English thing. It's a very British thing. School prefects are students that are usually high achievers, quite responsible, and they're given some authority by the teaching staff. They're not teachers by any stretch, but they are able to hand out light disciplines and such. And so this character, Percy, is very clearly a prefect for the school. Now you two, this year, you behave yourselves. If I get one more owl telling me you've blown up a toilet or blown up a toilet, we've never blown up a toilet. Great idea though. Thanks, Mum. It's not funny. And look after Ron. Don't worry. Uncle Ronnykins is safe with us. Shut up, said Ron again. He was almost as tall as the twins already, and his nose was still pink where his mother had rubbed it. Hey, Mum, guess what? Guess who we just met on the train? Harry leant back quickly so they couldn't see him looking. You know that black-haired boy who is near us in the station? Know who he is? Who? Harry Potter. Harry heard the little girl's voice. Oh, Mum, can I go on the train and see him, Mum? Oh, please. You've already seen him, Ginny, and the poor boy isn't something you goggle at in a zoo. Is he really, Fred? How do you know? Asked him. Saw his scar. It's really there, like lightning. Poor dear. No wonder he was alone. I wondered. He was ever so polite when he asked how to get on the platform. Never mind that. Do you think he remembers what you-know-who looks like? Their mother suddenly became very stern. I forbid you to ask him, Fred. No, don't you dare. As though he needs reminding of that on his first day at school. All right, keep your hair on. A whistle sounded. Hurry up, their mother said, and the 3 boys clambered onto the train. They leant out of the window for her to kiss them goodbye, and their younger sister began to cry. Don't, Ginny. We'll send you loads of owls. We'll send you a Hogwarts toilet seat. George! Only joking, Mum. The train began to move. Harry saw the boys' mother waving and their sister, half laughing, half crying, running to keep up with the train until it gathered too much speed. Then she fell back and waved. Harry watched the girl and her mother disappear as the train rounded the corner. Houses flashed past the window. Harry felt a great leap of excitement. He didn't know what he was going to, but it had to be better than what he was leaving behind. The door of the compartment slid open, and the youngest red-headed boy came in. Anyone sitting here? He asked, pointing out the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Harry shook his head, and the boy sat down. He glanced at Harry and then quickly looked out the window, pretending he hadn't looked. Harry saw he still had a black mark on his nose. Hey, Ron, the twins were back. Listen, we're going down the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there. Right, mumbled Ron. Harry, said the other twins, did we introduce ourselves? Fred and George Weasley, and this is Ron, our brother. See you later, then. Bye, said Harry and Ron. The twins slid the compartment doors shut behind them. Are you really Harry Potter? Ron blurted out. Harry nodded. Oh, well, I thought it might be one of Fred and George's jokes, said Ron. And have you really got... You know. He pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pulled back his fringe to show the lightning scar. Ron stared. So that's where you-know-who? Yes, said Harry, but I can't remember it. Nothing? Said Ron eagerly. Well, I remember a lot of green light, but nothing else. Wow. said Ron. He sat and stared at Harry for a few moments. Then, as though he had suddenly realized what he was doing, he looked quickly out of the window again. So clearly Ron does not follow his mother's instructions to not ask Harry about his childhood and the death of his parents. And that moment in the chapter where Mrs. Weasley, Ron's mother, is very protective of Harry, that's the beginning, and it's something that we see throughout all 7 books. And J.K. Rowling uses Mrs. Weasley to contrast the parenting style of Aunt Petunia, where even though Harry is not one of Mrs. Weasley's children, she takes great care for him, whereas Aunt Petunia, who is the adopted parent of Harry, takes very little care for him. Are all your family wizards? Asked Harry, who found Ron just as interesting as Ron found him. Yes, I think so, said Ron. I think Mum's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him. So you must know loads of magic already. The Weasleys were clearly one of those old wizarding families the pale boy in Diagon Alley had talked about. I heard you went to live with Muggles, said Ron. What are they like? Horrible. Well, not all of them. My aunt and uncle had, and cousin are, though. Wish I'd had 3 wizard brothers. 5, said Ron. For some reason, he was looking gloomy. I'm the 6th in our family to go to Hogwarts. You could say I've got a lot to live up to. Bill and Charlie have already left. Bill was head boy, and Charlie was captain of Quidditch. Now Percy's a prefect. Fred and George mess around a lot, but they still get really good marks, and everyone thinks they're really funny. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others, but if I do, it's no big deal, because they did it first. You never get anything new either. With 5 brothers, I've got Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's old rat. Ron reached inside his jacket and pulled out a fat gray rat which was asleep. His name's Scabbers, and he's useless. He hardly ever wakes up. Percy got an owl from my dad for being made a prefect, but they couldn't I got Scabbers instead. Ron's ears went pink. He seemed to think he'd said too much, because he went back to staring out the window. Harry didn't think there was anything wrong with not being able to afford an owl. After all, he'd never had any money in his life until a month ago, and he told Ron so, all about having to wear Dudley's old clothes and never getting proper birthday presents. This seemed to cheer Ron up. And until Hagrid told me I didn't know anything about being a wizard or about my parents or Voldemort, Ron gasped. So when you gasp, that's when you take in breath. That's a gasp. What? Said Harry. You said you knows whose name, said Ron, sounding both shocked and impressed. I'd have thought you, of all people. I'm not trying to be brave or anything, saying the name, said Harry. I just never knew you shouldn't. See what I mean? I've got loads to learn, I bet. He added, voicing for the first time something that had been worrying him a lot. I bet I'm the worst in the class. You won't be. There's loads of people who come from Muggle families, and they learn quick enough. While they had been talking, the train had carried them out of London. Now they were speeding past fields full of cows and sheep. They were quiet for a time, watching the fields and lanes flick past. Around 12:30, there was a great clattering outside in the corridor, and a smiling, dimpled woman slid back their doors and said, "Anything off the trolley, dears?" So when you're dimpled and you smile, you have sometimes little indents here. And so this woman, it's usually when you have dimples, it's, for whatever reason, it's a stereotype of being a very friendly person. And so this trolley woman, she's smiling and she's dimpled, so it's to indicate that she's just a very sweet woman. She's not a major character at all, but it's again a way that J.K. Rowling uses adjectives and verbs to give you information about the characters without explicitly stating she's a nice person. Harry, who hadn't had any breakfast, leapt to his feet, but Ron's ears went pink again and he muttered that he'd brought sandwiches. Harry went out into the corridor. Corridor means hallway. He had never had any money for sweets with the Dursleys, and now that he had pockets rattling with gold and silver, he was ready to buy as many Mars bars as he could carry. But the woman didn't have Mars bars. What she did have were Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, Drubel's best blowing gum, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, cauldron cakes, licorice wands, and a number of other strange things Harry had never seen in his life. Not wanting to miss anything, he got some of everything and paid the woman 11 silver sickles and 7 bronze nuts. Ron stared as Harry brought it all back into the compartment and tipped it onto an empty seat. Hungry, are you? Starving, said Harry, taking a large bite out of a pumpkin pasty. Ron had taken out a lumpy package and unwrapped it. There were 4 sandwiches in there. He pulled one of them apart and said, "She always forgets I don't like corned beef." "Swap you for one of these," said Harry, holding up a pasty. "Go on." "You don't want this. It's all dry," said Ron. "She hasn't got much time," he added quickly. "You know, with 5 of us." "Go on, have a pasty," said Harry, who had never had anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share it with. It was a nice feeling sitting there with Ron, eating their way through all Harry's pasties and cakes. The sandwiches lay forgotten. "What are these?" Harry asked Ron, holding up a pack of chocolate frogs. "They're not really frogs, are they?" He was starting to feel that nothing would surprise him. "No," said Ron, "but see what the card is. I'm missing Agrippa." "What?" "Oh, of course you wouldn't know. Chocolate frogs have cards inside them, you know, to collect. Famous witches and wizards. I've got about 500, but I haven't got Agrippa or Ptolemy." And so that's supposed to relate to the everyday person reading the book, where when I was a kid, you would collect things like hockey cards or baseball cards. And then in the late 1990s, things like Pokemon cards, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh! And so J.K. Rowling has taken something very, very relatable to everybody who's reading. Really, hockey cards, especially in Canada, was the big sport. In the UK, probably would have been like cricket cards or something. And instead of it being athletes, it's famous witches and wizards. Harry unwrapped his chocolate frog and picked up the card. It showed a man's face. He wore half-moon glasses, had a long crooked nose, and flowing silver hair, beard, and mustache. Underneath the picture was the name Albus Dumbledore. "So this is Dumbledore," said Harry. "Don't tell me you'd never heard of Dumbledore," said Ron. "Can I have a frog? I might get Agrippa. Thanks." Harry turned over his card and read, "Albus Dumbledore, currently headmaster of Hogwarts. Considered by many the greatest wizard of modern times. Professor Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner, Nicholas Flamel. Professor Dumbledore enjoys chamber music and 10-pin bowling." So again, at that very bottom, he enjoys chamber music and 10-pin bowling. That's bowling, where you go to a bowling alley, you throw the ball down, and you knock the pins over. It's something that non-magic people would be very familiar with, and it's to show implicitly that Dumbledore is not afraid to do muggle things. Harry turned the card back over and saw to his astonishment that Dumbledore's face had disappeared. "He's gone!" "Well, you can't expect him to hang around all day," said Ron. "He'll be back." "No, I've got Morgana again, and I've got about 6 of her. Do you want it? You can start collecting." Ron's eyes strayed to the pile of chocolate frogs waiting to be unwrapped. "Help yourself," said Harry. "But in, the Muggle world, people just stay in photos." "Do they?" "What, they don't move at all?" Ron sounded amazed. "Weird." Harry stared as Dumbledore sidled back into the picture on his card and gave a small smile. Ron was more interested in eating